Hello, everyone. I am Henri Makembe, CEO of Do Big Things, and welcome to Do Big Talks, where we discuss the latest trends in digital advocacy. On today's episode, we'd like to discuss authenticity in messaging with our very own Kim Hohman. Kim's comes to DBT with about 2 decades of experience in digital strategy, and she's what I would consider a digital wizard. In our short time here, she's already been helping our clients getting some programs up and taking their digital advocacy to the next level. Kim, to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Henry. Happy to be here. So yeah, like you mentioned, I have about 2 decades of experience in digital. I started off just with an interest in how people use digital, how brands and companies were communicating with people online. And that sort of grew into a career, actually. I spent about 12 years at Nickelodeon doing digital programming with them. And then I transitioned to nonprofit progressive work about 4 years ago, and it feels like home for me. So it's really work that I love.
Yeah, to me, what is very exciting about talking to you is really your breadth of experience and really the different audiences that you've had to engage with, from Nickelodeon to um, uh, uh, nonprofit organization and helping them with digital. So to me, it's very, very interesting. And this is why I'm very excited to talk to you about this topic. Let's dig in about authenticity. What is it and why do you think it's important in digital outreach?
So the way I think about authenticity in digital messaging is really something that came to me many years ago when I was working at Nickelodeon. It was at the beginning of social media. I've been around for a while, and we were doing a lot of work on social that felt very much to me like the way that brands were talking to people. And I was very interested in this idea of talking to people online as a brand the way that people talk to each other. And so I coined this phrase, using social like people use social. And it was really transformative for us. And online, just because we found ourselves being able to have more conversations the way that people were talking to each other. And so we were part of the conversation instead of sort of leading or directing a conversation. We became a part of it. And I think that that really helped us in gaining trust. And it was a really nice opportunity for us to not only tell our stories as sort of the people behind social, but to tell our brand story and to get people to understand who we were as a brand. We talk a lot about brand personas when we're doing digital work. And really, this was sort of the dawn of that, where we were really just starting to help people understand who we were as a brand in a way that before that we didn't really have the opportunity to do. And so I think it's really critical, and I think it really goes a long way in helping gain the trust of your users.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I just remember there was a time where we were trying to tell people that you shouldn't be talking at people, right? When
Yes.
we were having this conversation back in the day, and we'd be like, "Don't. This is not another press release. This is an opportunity to
Right.
engage in an authentic way with folks." So you were definitely at the cutting edge of that. Um, Digging in a little bit on that, since you were help Nickelodeon transition to that, who do you think has been doing authenticity well online?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are starting to get better at it, and I think that that's a good sign for the consumer. But when I think about the political space, AOC in particular is doing a fantastic job of really. She uses social media, again, the way that people use social media, but she takes it a step further than a lot of other politicians. So you can find her on her IG Live, talking about policy in a very sort of casual way that you might talk about policy with someone on the street who doesn't necessarily understand it or doesn't work in the political space. And she'll do it in very real and human ways. She'll be, cooking a meal and having a conversation with people. You find her on Twitch. She's a master at new platforms and really engaging with people where they are, which I think is critical. Outside of the political space, I have loved for years the work that Wendy's, the fast food chain, does on Twitter. And when you find an interaction, for instance, where Wendy is trading jabs with Burger King on Twitter or something, you get a real sense that the people behind the accounts, but also the brands themselves, really understand that this is an opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, to just engage in the same way that people are engaging to make yourself a part of the conversation. You can look all across Twitter and find people trading barbs. And so to see these big, huge national brands doing it in a very human way really gains the trust of the people who are using the platform in that way, because they see the brand as just another user or just another person on the platform.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm a big soccer fan, and I follow a lot of the soccer teams online. And it's been interesting to see how their social media has changed and be more authentic and more about the people, more and more and more about their fan base. So I couldn't agree with you more. One thing I would like to dig into: do you think being authentic makes it easier to jump on a new platform?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. I think when we look at TikTok and the explosion of TikTok, brands have had a really hard time adapting to TikTok because it's so user friendly and grassroots, and it's really fundamentally about people. And a lot of the things that are um, look the best and are performing the best on Twitter are not the things that are super polished, are not the things. They're the things that people are recording in their bedrooms and stitching together. And when you come at that from a brand perspective with this really polished design look, it doesn't quite fit the platform. And so when you can get down to that sort of really authentic, really honest way of sharing your messaging, I think that you have a much better chance of resonating with people on new platforms.
That makes sense. And I think you said Twitter instead of TikTok there, but I think
Oh
we
yeah.
all get the point. And then, continuing on that trend, do you think authenticity it goes hand in hand with being an influencer or becoming an influencer?
100%. You can look across all of the influencers, and the reason that we love them and the reason that we follow them is because we feel like we know them. We don't feel like they're selling us a persona. And the fact of the matter is some of them probably are. Their real lives probably don't look exactly like what they're selling us. But the fact of the matter is they have given us an opportunity to know who they are as people. And when we have that opportunity, we can start to build trust in those people, but also we relate to them because we feel like, oh, they're just like us. I always think back to the old sort of Us Weekly kind of rags where they would have the stars. They're just like us, like these sections. Those sections are popular because people want to understand that people who are sort of displaying their lives in ways that look very different than us actually are just human beings who are sort of have flaws and live their lives in ways that aren't necessarily so glamorous all the time. And I think that it matters. I think it helps people be relatable.
That's very true. I tend to agree with what you're saying there. That yeah, authenticity help folks become an influencer because people can relate to them on a day-to-day basis. You can see the person behind your screen is someone just like you, and I think that's been very effective. Um, and talking about relating to folks that are behind like you, obviously we've all been going through COVID, right? And I think that has given brands the opportunity and organizations the opportunity to kind of tweak their messaging, be a little more authentic. Do you think that let me rephrase that question. How do you think COVID has impacted people's and organizations and brands' ability to be more authentic online?
Yeah. So COVID has impacted all of us, and we've been home, and so a lot of people are using digital to communicate with one another in different ways than we have. We're doing an interview on Zoom right now, as an example. But one thing that I think has happened in the past year and a half is because we're all in the same space, we're all, no matter what job we're doing, we're often doing it from home. Because we're all sort of coming from the same perspective, organizations have had to become a lot more empathetic in their approach. And I think that their hands were forced in a big way, right? So I don't think, in some cases, I think it wasn't a choice. In some cases, I think it was, I'm sitting at my computer doing my job, which is to, sort of reach out and, help this progressive organization raise money or provide services to people who need it. And my kids are running around in the background, and I'm sitting in my office and it's loud and I'm at home. And so you have a level of empathy that you might not have when you're sitting in your office, which is tidy and quiet and sort of pristine in a very much work-like environment. And so I think our hands have been forced into that empathy space. And I think that naturally, a lot of brands have just evolved into messaging that has more heart and more emotion behind it. And again, that authenticity is about relating with the people who you're trying to talk to, who are going through some really horrible, difficult times right now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the heart messaging has been pulling at the strings and making sure that folks can relate to brands. And it's been very interesting to watch that transformation and people who've put campaigns behind that and see. But my question, looking long term, and my question to you is, do you think this empathy phase that led to authenticity lasts past COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. It's easy to see the pendulum sort of swinging back to people becoming more comfortable. I think we're seeing it in the way that we're engaging in our regular lives with the vaccine, for instance. People are really desiring to return to something that feels a little bit more normal. But I think that it would be a real missed opportunity if we abandon what we've learned during this time about being authentic and being empathetic in the way that we're communicating, because I think we're really doing a service. And I think particularly when we think about the rise that we've seen in disinformation and the attempts to combat it, I think if we want to continue to gain the trust of people, that authentic approach is really what's going to be the difference.
Yeah, and I think when you touch on disinformation, that is a really good point to kind of end on. It's if you are authentic, it's quote unquote easier to fight disinformation because people already trust you. People already think that you're a trusted resource and therefore are more willing to listen to what you have to say about possibly very complicated and very nuanced topics. So I think that is a very good point and a very fine point to end on. Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everybody else, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Do Big Talks, and please stay tuned for future episode.